You spent decades carrying everyone else. Tonight your brain finally says it is your turn. That quiet moment when you decided to stop expecting anything from your partner was not a breakdown. It was the most powerful awakening your mind has ever experienced. Science confirms what your tired heart already knew. Letting go of expectations is not giving up. It is the beginning of real freedom. If you were born in the 1960s and you feel that strange ache inside your chest right now, please stay with me. This story is about the hidden miracle living inside your aging brain. It is about the tears you swallowed when nobody was watching. It is about the years you spent putting yourself last. And it is about why all of that suffering was quietly building something extraordinary inside you. Something that younger generations cannot replicate no matter how hard they try. You have been running on empty for so long. You forgot what it feels like to run for yourself. But tonight I want to show you the science behind your pain. I want to prove to you that your exhaustion was not wasted. Every sleepless night, and every swallowed tear was shaping your brain in ways that researchers are only now beginning to understand. So please set down whatever role you have been carrying today. Put aside being someone's parent or spouse or employee. Just be yourself for the next few minutes. Grab a warm drink and settle in. This is your story and it deserves to be heard. You know that hollow feeling. It sits right in the center of your chest like a stone. You cannot name it, but you feel it every single evening. The house is quieter than it used to be. The children have grown and scattered into their own lives. The kitchen that once echoed with laughter now hums with the low sound of a refrigerator. The ticking of the clock on the wall feels louder than it ever did before. You find yourself standing at the sink washing the same dishes. You are staring through the window at the darkening sky. And somewhere between the soap bubbles and the silence a thought drifts through your mind. Was this really what all those years of sacrifice were building toward? You do not say it out loud. You never say it out loud. But the feeling is there. It has been growing for months or maybe even years. It is a cold kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being physically alone. It is the loneliness of being surrounded by people who never truly see you. Your partner is in the next room watching television. Your phone has messages from your adult children. There are people in your life. But none of them seem to notice the weight you carry. None of them seem to understand that you are drowning. And the cruelest part is that you have been drowning so quietly, and so gracefully that everyone assumes you are fine. Because you always look fine. Because you trained yourself to always look fine. That is what your generation learned to do. Let me take you back to where this pattern began. You grew up in an analog world. There were no smartphones and no internet. Information did not arrive instantly in your pocket. If you wanted to hear your favorite song, you had to sit beside the radio and wait. You kept your finger hovering over the record button of a cassette player. You held your breath until the DJ finally played the track you loved. Then you pressed that button with the kind of precision and timing that modern technology has made completely unnecessary. If you wanted to meet a friend, you wrote a message on a chalkboard at the train station. You scribbled something like, "I will be at the coffee shop on the corner." Then you sat there for an hour or maybe two. You did not know if your friend would see the message. You did not know if they would come. But you waited because waiting was what people did. You trusted that the other person would show up. That trust was not naive. It was the foundation of every relationship you built. It was the invisible thread connecting you to the world. In an age of inconvenience, you learned patience. You learned faith. You learn that caring for another person means sometimes sitting in discomfort and choosing to believe in them anyway. That lesson followed you into adulthood. It followed you into your marriage. It followed you into your career. And it shaped the way you love other people. You love by enduring. You love by sacrificing. You love by showing up even when no one asks you to. These are beautiful qualities. But they are also the qualities that slowly wore your heart down to the bone. Because the world you grew up in taught you that devotion is always rewarded. Hard work is always recognized. And if you just keep giving long enough, someone will eventually turn around and say thank you. Someone will see what you have done and acknowledge your pain. That was the unspoken promise of your entire generation. Give everything and one day it will all come back to you. Your 20s and 30s arrived during a period of extraordinary economic energy. The economy was booming and optimism was everywhere. People worked long hours because the future seemed limitless. There was a popular saying that captured the spirit of the era. Can you keep fighting for 24 hours? That was the mindset. Work hard and tomorrow will be better than today. Pour yourself into the company and the company will take care of you. Build a family and the family will be your reward. Everyone believed in the upward trajectory. It was not even a question. It was simply the way things were. And so you worked. You worked with everything you had. You stayed late at the office. You woke up early to make breakfast for the family. You ironed shirts at midnight. You balanced budgets with one hand and wiped tears with the other. You were the bridge between the older generation above you and the younger generation below you. The older generation demanded respect and obedience. They carried the stern values of a post-war world. They believed in hierarchy and duty and silence. Meanwhile, the younger generation was growing up with new technology and new ideas. They questioned authority. They valued efficiency over loyalty. And you stood between these two worlds. You translated for both sides. You absorbed the pressure from above and the skepticism from below. And through all of it you never complained. Because complaining was not something your generation did. The women of your generation carried an especially heavy burden. Many of you were the eldest daughters in your families. That role came with unspoken responsibilities. You were expected to care for your younger siblings. You were expected to help your mother. You were expected to put your own needs last. When you married, that pattern did not change. It only intensified. You moved into your husband's family home. You navigated the complicated expectations of in-laws. You cooked and cleaned and organized holidays. You smiled through exhaustion because that was what a good wife did. Then the children came. And if you thought the demands on your time were heavy before they became almost unbearable. The early years of parenting were a blur of diapers and feedings and sleepless nights. You were so focused on keeping your children alive and healthy that you forgot to eat some days. You literally could not taste your own meals because your mind was somewhere else. It was always somewhere else. It was on the baby's fever. It was on the grocery list. It was on the pile of laundry. It was on the school permission slip that needed to be signed by tomorrow morning. And you handled all of it. You handled all of it without a manual and without an app and without a support group that met on Thursday evenings. You just did it. Because that is who you are. Then the children grew older and the house grew quieter. You expected this transition to feel like relief. You expected to finally catch your breath. But instead it felt like standing in the middle of an empty stadium after the crowd has gone home. The silence was not peaceful. It was disorienting. For decades your identity had been defined by the needs of others. You were someone's mother. You were someone's wife. You were someone's employee. You were the person who held everything together. And now the things that needed holding together had loosened their grip on you. The children were calling less often. Your partner had settled into a routine that did not seem to include you in any meaningful way. Your career was winding down or had already ended. And you were left standing in the middle of your own life wondering who you actually are when you strip away all the roles. That question is terrifying. It is terrifying because most people in your generation were never given permission to ask it. And then there is the matter of your marriage. This is perhaps the most painful part of the story. You gave everything to this partnership. You gave your youth and your energy and your ambition. You gave up hobbies and friendships and dreams. You did this willingly because you believed in the promise. The promise that love is reciprocal. That sacrifice is noticed. That one day your partner would look at you and truly see the enormity of what you had done. But that day did not come. Instead, the years accumulated like snowfall. Layer after layer of small disappointments. Your partner forgot your birthday. Your partner did not notice when you changed your hair. Your partner responded to your tears with silence or irritation. You tried to explain how you felt, but the words seemed to hit a wall and slide down without leaving a mark. You tried harder. You cooked better meals. You kept the house even more spotless. You swallowed your anger and replaced it with a smile. And still nothing changed. The recognition you craved remained out of reach. It was like standing on your toes trying to touch a ceiling that kept moving higher. Every time you thought you had finally done enough, the bars shifted. And the exhaustion of that endless reaching was destroying you from the inside out. Here is what happens in the brain during this cycle. When you expect something from another person, your brain activates its reward anticipation system. It releases chemicals associated with hope and desire. Your mind is essentially placing a bet. It says, I will invest this effort, and I expect a return. When the return arrives, the brain celebrates. It floods with satisfaction and connection. But when the return does not arrive, something very different happens. The brain registers a prediction error. It expected a reward and the reward did not come. This mismatch triggers a stress response. Stress hormones begin to flow. Your body tenses. Your heart rate increases slightly. Your thinking becomes narrower and more rigid. Now imagine this cycle repeating hundreds of times. Imagine it repeating thousands of times across 30 or 40 years of marriage. Each unmet expectation is a small wound to the brain. Each ignored gesture is a tiny scar. And over time, these small wounds accumulate into a state of chronic emotional exhaustion. Researchers have found that prolonged exposure to stress hormones can actually change the structure of the brain. It can shrink the areas responsible for memory and learning. It can weaken the connections that regulate emotion. It can make you feel foggy and tired and unable to think clearly. And this is not a metaphor. This is physical reality. Your brain has been under siege for decades. The siege was not launched by an enemy army. It was launched by the simple human act of hoping someone would love you the way you loved them. Now here is the part that changes everything. There comes a moment in this long, painful cycle when something inside you shifts. It is not dramatic. There is no shouting and no slamming of doors. It happens quietly. Maybe you are washing dishes again. Maybe you are folding laundry. Maybe you are lying in bed staring at the ceiling while your partner sleeps peacefully beside you. And in that silent, ordinary moment a thought arrives. It is clear and calm and final. I am done expecting anything from this person. That thought does not feel triumphant. It does not feel angry. It feels like a long, slow exhale. Like setting down a suitcase you have been carrying up an endless staircase. You did not plan this moment. It simply arrived. And once it arrived, you knew there was no going back. The world did not change around you. The dishes were still in the sink. The laundry was still waiting to be folded. Your partner was still sleeping the same way they always sleep. But something fundamental had shifted inside your chest. A door had closed. And behind that closed door a new space was opening up. A space you had never visited before. A space that belonged entirely to you. Most people would call this moment giving up. Society has trained us to view the end of emotional investment as failure. We are told that good marriages require constant effort. We are told that love means never stopping the fight. And there is truth in those ideas up to a point. But there is also a dangerous lie hidden inside them. The lie is that your worth depends on someone else's response to you. The lie is that giving up on a one-sided expectation is the same as giving up on yourself. It is not. They are completely different things. And the science proves it. When your brain finally releases the grip of chronic expectations, something remarkable begins to happen. The constant flow of stress hormones starts to slow down. Your nervous system, which has been stuck in a state of high alert for years, begins to relax. Think about what this means. For decades your body has been operating as if it were in danger. Every unanswered bid for affection was interpreted as a threat. Every cold shoulder was a signal that something was wrong. And your brain responded to each of these signals by flooding your system with chemicals designed to help you survive. But survival mode is not meant to last forever. It is meant to be temporary. It is meant to activate during a crisis and then shut down when the crisis passes. The problem is that your crisis never passed. It just kept going year after year. And your brain never got the signal to stand down. Until now. That quiet decision to stop expecting was the signal your brain had been waiting for. It was the all clear. The storm is over. You can stand down now. And with that signal your brain begins the process of recovery. The first thing that happens is deceptively simple. You start to think more clearly. The mental fog that had become your constant companion begins to thin. You find yourself noticing things you had overlooked. The color of the sky in the morning. The taste of your coffee. The way sunlight falls across the kitchen floor. These are not new experiences. They were always there. But your brain was too busy managing the emotional crisis to register them. Now that the crisis has been downgraded, your brain has bandwidth to spare. And it begins using that bandwidth in extraordinary ways. Researchers have identified a type of intelligence that actually grows stronger with age. It is called crystallized intelligence. Unlike the quick processing speed of youth, this form of intelligence is built from experience. It is the accumulation of everything you have ever learned and survived and overcome. Every argument you navigated. Every crisis you managed. Every heartbreak you endured. Every impossible situation you somehow found your way through. All of these experiences have been quietly compiling in your brain like a vast internal library. And the fascinating thing is that this library does not shrink as you get older. It grows. It becomes richer and more detailed with every passing year. The connections between different areas of knowledge become stronger and more fluid. A 60-year-old brain may not solve a math equation as quickly as a 20-year-old brain. But a 60-year-old brain can walk into a complicated human situation and understand its dynamics instantly. It can read the room in ways that a younger person simply cannot. It can sense danger before it arrives. It can detect dishonesty in a single glance. It can find creative solutions by drawing on patterns that took a lifetime to accumulate. This is not a consolation prize. This is a genuine cognitive advantage, and it is uniquely yours. But here is the crucial detail. This crystallized intelligence can only fully activate when the brain is not consumed by emotional labor. When you were spending all of your mental energy hoping and wishing and waiting for someone to validate your sacrifice, your brain could not access its deepest reserves of wisdom. The stress hormones were blocking the path. It is like trying to read a book in a room where someone is constantly shouting. The words are there on the page, but you cannot focus on them. The noise is too loud. Releasing your expectations silenced that noise. And for the first time in decades, your brain can hear itself think. It can access the full depth of everything you have learned. It can connect ideas that were previously kept apart by the static of chronic stress. And this is why so many people who reach this turning point describe the experience in almost identical terms. They say it feels like waking up. Not waking up from sleep. Waking up from a dream they did not realize they were trapped inside. There is another change happening in your brain at this stage. It involves the way your brain processes emotions. For most of your adult life, your emotional energy has been directed outward. You were constantly monitoring other people. How is my partner feeling today? Did I say something wrong? Is my child happy? Is my boss satisfied with my work? This outward focus is natural and even necessary during certain phases of life. But it comes at a cost. When all of your emotional attention is directed at others, there is nothing left for yourself. You lose touch with your own feelings. You forget what brings you joy. You cannot remember the last time you did something purely because you wanted to. Not because someone needed you to. Not because it was your duty. But because it made your heart feel light. That disconnection from your own emotional life is one of the hidden tragedies of your generation. You were so busy feeling responsible for everyone else that you stopped feeling anything for yourself. But when you release the expectation that someone else will make you happy, something shifts. Your emotional attention begins to turn inward. Not in a selfish way. Not in a way that shuts other people out. But in a way that finally includes you in the equation. You start asking questions you have not asked in decades. What do I actually want? What makes me feel alive? What would I do with a free afternoon if I had no obligations? These questions might seem small. But for someone who has spent 40 years living for others, they are revolutionary. They are the first signs of emotional sovereignty. And they mark the beginning of the most exciting chapter of your life. Let me explain what I mean by emotional sovereignty. It is the state of being the primary author of your own emotional experience. It means that your mood is no longer determined by someone else's behavior. Your happiness is no longer conditional on your partner saying the right thing. Your sense of self-worth is no longer tied to whether your children call you this week. You are still a loving person. You still care deeply about the people in your life. But your inner peace is no longer hostage to their actions. This is not coldness. This is not detachment. This is the healthiest and most mature form of love that exists. Because when you love from a place of emotional sovereignty, you love without desperation. You love without keeping score. You love because you choose to, not because you need something in return. And paradoxically, this kind of love is often more powerful and more magnetic than the needy love that preceded it. People are drawn to those who are at peace with themselves. When you stop chasing approval, you often find that approval starts chasing you. Now I want to address something that might be weighing on your mind. When you made the decision to stop expecting things from your partner, it probably raised a question. What does this mean for my marriage? Does this mean I should leave? Does this mean the relationship is over? These are valid questions. And the answer is more nuanced than you might expect. Releasing expectations does not automatically mean the marriage is finished. In many cases, it means the opposite. It means the marriage has a chance to evolve into something new, something better. Something based on mutual respect rather than mutual obligation. Think of it this way. When two people are locked in a cycle of unmet expectations, the relationship becomes a battlefield. Every interaction is loaded with subtext. Every silence is interpreted as rejection. Every gesture is measured against what was hoped for. The emotional atmosphere is thick with resentment and disappointment. But when one person steps off the battlefield, something interesting happens. The tension breaks. The dynamic shifts. And sometimes the other person begins to change in response. Not because they were forced to, but because the removal of pressure creates space for genuine connection. This does not always happen. Sometimes the marriage has run its course. And if that is your reality, that is okay too. But the important thing to understand is that releasing expectations gives you options. It gives you clarity. It allows you to see the relationship for what it actually is rather than what you desperately need it to be. And from that place of clarity, you can make a real decision about your future. There is a concept in psychology called self-transcendence. It was identified by researchers studying what happens when people move beyond the usual concerns of daily life. In a state of self-transcendence, a person stops being driven by external validation. They stop measuring themselves against society's expectations. They stop trying to fit into roles that no longer serve them. Instead, they become deeply interested in their own authentic experience. They pursue activities and relationships that align with their true values. They live with a sense of purpose that comes from within rather than from outside. This state is not reserved for monks or philosophers. It is available to anyone who has done the hard work of letting go. And you have done that work. You have been doing it for years without even knowing it had a name. Every time you chose to keep going when you wanted to quit. Every time you absorbed someone else's pain without showing your own. Every time you put your dreams on hold because someone else's needs came first. All of that was preparation for this moment. You were not just surviving. You were building the foundation for a transformation that most people never achieve. I want you to think about something. Think about all the skills you developed during those difficult years. You learned to read people with extraordinary accuracy. You can walk into a room and sense the emotional temperature in seconds. You know when someone is lying. You know when someone is hurting even if they are smiling. You develop the ability to manage chaos. You could handle a crying baby and a ringing phone and a boiling pot on the stove all at the same time. You learned to solve problems with limited resources. When money was tight, you found creative ways to make things work. When time was short, you became a master of efficiency. When the people around you were falling apart, you became the calm center of the storm. These are not ordinary skills. These are the skills of someone who has been tested by life at the highest level. And the beautiful thing is that these skills do not expire. They do not disappear when the children leave home. They do not vanish when you step away from your career. They are woven into the fabric of your brain. They are part of your neural architecture. And they are ready to be redirected towards something magnificent. Toward you? Let me paint a picture of what this next chapter can look like. Imagine waking up on a Tuesday morning with no obligations. The house is quiet, but the silence does not feel oppressive anymore. It feels spacious. It feels like possibility. You make yourself a cup of coffee exactly the way you like it. Not the way your partner likes it. Not the way you used to make it when the children were rushing off to school. Your way. You sit by the window and you watch the world outside. There is no hurry. There is no checklist. There is just this moment. And in this moment you realize something that takes your breath away. You are free. Not free in a dramatic cinematic sense. Free in the most ordinary, and therefore most profound sense. You are free to decide what this day will be about. You can read a book you have been meaning to read for 15 years. You can take a walk through a neighborhood you have never explored. You can sign up for a class that interests you. You can visit a museum. You can sit in a park and do absolutely nothing. The choice is entirely yours. And that simple ability to choose is the thing you have been missing for the last 4 decades. Do you remember what it felt like to be curious? Not the anxious curiosity of worrying about someone else's problems, but the pure, wide-eyed curiosity of discovering something new. That feeling is still inside you. It has been buried under layers of responsibility, but it never disappeared. Your brain is wired for curiosity. It thrives on novelty. And research shows that the aging brain responds to new experiences with remarkable enthusiasm. When you learn something new, your brain forms fresh neural connections. When you visit an unfamiliar place, your hippocampus lights up with activity. When you engage with art or music or nature, your brain releases chemicals that promote well-being and cognitive health. You are not too old for any of this. Your brain is not declining. It is waiting. It has been waiting for you to give it something to work with besides worry and sacrifice. And now that you have released the burden of unmet expectations, your brain is ready to come alive in ways you have not experienced since you were young. I want to be specific about something because vague inspiration is not helpful. I want to talk about what happens in the brain when you pursue a personal passion after years of neglecting yourself. There is a network in your brain called the default mode network. It is active when you are daydreaming or reflecting or imagining possibilities. During the stressful years of caretaking, this network was largely suppressed. Your brain was too busy putting out fires to allow itself the luxury of imagination. But when the pressure lifts, this network reactivates. And in an experienced brain like yours, it does something extraordinary. It begins connecting disparate memories and ideas in creative ways. This is why so many people discover artistic talents later in life. This is why retirees often become excellent writers or painters or gardeners. Their brains are not creating something from nothing. They are finally accessing a reservoir of experience that has been accumulating for decades. You have that same reservoir. And it is deeper than you can imagine. Let me tell you about the concept of post-traumatic growth. It is a well-documented phenomenon in psychology. It describes the positive transformation that can occur after someone experiences significant emotional hardship. People who go through difficult life events often emerge with a stronger sense of personal strength. They develop a deeper appreciation for life. They discover new possibilities they never considered before. They experience more meaningful relationships. And they undergo a shift in their philosophical understanding of the world. This does not mean the suffering was good. It does not mean the pain was justified. It means that human beings have an extraordinary capacity to transform adversity into wisdom. And you are living proof of that capacity. The years of emotional neglect in your marriage were not wasted. The decades of thankless sacrifice were not pointless. They were the raw material from which your brain has been constructing something remarkable. A version of you that is stronger and wiser and more resilient than you have ever been. There is something else I want to address. The fear of being alone. For your generation, this fear runs deep. You were raised in a culture that valued togetherness above all else. Being single was seen as a failure. Being independent was seen as selfish. And being alone in your later years was presented as the worst possible outcome. But I want to challenge that narrative with everything I have. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. Solitude and loneliness are completely different states. Loneliness is the pain of feeling disconnected from others. Solitude is the peace of being connected to yourself. And right now in this new chapter of your life, solitude is your greatest ally. It is the space where you can hear your own thoughts. It is the environment where creativity and wisdom flourish. It is the container in which your true self can finally expand without being compressed by the demands of others. Research on solitude and well-being has consistently shown that people who learn to enjoy time alone report higher levels of life satisfaction. They experience less anxiety and depression. They have a stronger sense of identity. They are more creative. They are better at problem solving. And perhaps most importantly, they bring more to their relationships when they do choose to engage with others. Because they are engaging from fullness rather than from emptiness. They are sharing rather than seeking. They are giving because they want to, not because they are terrified of what will happen if they stop. Think about what you bring to the table now. You are not the exhausted people pleaser you were 10 years ago. You are someone who has been refined by decades of experience. You understand the complexity of human relationships in ways that cannot be taught in any classroom. You have a patience that was forged in the fire of real adversity. You have a compassion that comes not from theory but from having suffered and survived. You have a sense of humor that only develops after you have seen the absurdity of life up close. These qualities make you extraordinary. Not in a flashy, superficial way. In a deep and lasting way. The kind of way that draws people in and makes them feel safe. The kind of way that makes younger people stop and listen when you speak. You may not realize it, but you have become exactly the kind of person the world needs most. Someone who has earned their wisdom the hard way. Now let me address the practical side of this transformation. How do you actually begin to live for yourself when you have spent your entire adult life living for others? The answer is simpler than you think. You start small. You start with one decision a day that is purely for you. Maybe today you buy yourself a book you have been wanting to read. Maybe tomorrow you take a different route on your daily walk. Maybe this weekend you visit that little town you have always driven past but never stopped in. These are not grand gestures. They are tiny acts of self-reclamation. But each one sends a powerful signal to your brain. It says, I matter. My desires are valid. My time is my own. And each time your brain receives that signal, it reinforces the new neural pathways of self-worth and independence. Over time, these small choices accumulate into a completely new way of being. You are not becoming someone different. You are becoming more of who you always were underneath all those layers of obligation. I also want to talk about the physical changes that happen when you release chronic stress. Your body has been carrying this tension for decades. Your shoulders have been tight. Your jaw has been clenched. Your sleep has been shallow and restless. When you stop pouring emotional energy into unmet expectations, your body begins to relax. Your sleep improves. Your digestion improves. The headaches that plagued you become less frequent. The chronic fatigue that you assumed was just part of aging begins to lift. And as your body relaxes, your brain functions even better. Because the brain and body are not separate systems. They are one integrated network. When the body is at peace, the brain is at peace. And when the brain is at peace, it is capable of extraordinary things. Some of you might be wondering about your partner. You might be thinking about what happens to the marriage when one person achieves emotional independence. The honest answer is that it varies. In some cases, the partner notices the change. They see a new lightness in your eyes. They sense a confidence that was not there before. And this can spark their own transformation. Not because you demanded it, but because growth is contagious. When one person in a relationship begins to change, the other person is often pulled along by the current. In other cases, the partner remains unchanged. They continue living in their own patterns. And that is their choice. But here is the critical difference. Their choice no longer controls your emotional state. Their behavior no longer has the power to ruin your day. You have reclaimed that power for yourself. And from this position of strength, you can make a clear-eyed decision about the relationship. You might choose to stay. Not out of fear or obligation, but out of genuine choice. A conscious decision to share your life with another imperfect human being while maintaining your own inner peace. Or you might choose to redefine the terms of the relationship. You might create a partnership based on friendly independence. Two people sharing a home but giving each other the space to be individuals. This arrangement is far more common than society acknowledges. And for many couples in their later years, it is the most honest and sustainable way to coexist. The important thing is that the choice is yours. It is not being made for you by fear or habit or the expectations of others. Let me come back to the science for a moment. There is research showing that the brains of people over 60 have a unique capacity for what scientists call bilateral processing. Younger brains tend to rely heavily on one hemisphere for certain tasks. But older brains recruit both hemispheres simultaneously. This means your brain is literally working with more of itself than a younger brain does. It is casting a wider net. It is drawing on more resources. And this bilateral processing is associated with better decision-making and deeper emotional understanding. So when someone tells you that your best years are behind you, they are not just being unkind. They are being factually wrong. Your brain is operating at a level of integration that younger people have not yet achieved. You have access to a cognitive depth that comes only with time and experience. There is one more thing I want to share with you. It concerns the relationship between emotional independence and physical health. Studies have consistently found that chronic emotional stress is one of the strongest predictors of poor health outcomes in older adults. It is associated with higher rates of heart disease and weakened immune function and accelerated cognitive decline. But the reverse is also true. Emotional liberation is associated with improved health outcomes. When people release chronic resentment and unmet expectations, their blood pressure tends to stabilize. Their immune function improves. Their risk of cognitive decline decreases. This is not wishful thinking. This is documented in peer-reviewed research. Your decision to stop expecting things from others is not just an emotional victory. It is a medical one. You are literally adding healthy years to your life by choosing peace over resentment. I want to pause here and acknowledge something. This transition is not easy. Releasing expectations does not happen overnight. It is not a switch you flip and suddenly everything is different. It is a process. There will be days when you slip back into old patterns. There will be moments when you catch yourself hoping for validation that you know will never come. And when that happens, please be gentle with yourself. You spent decades building those neural pathways of expectation. They will not disappear in a week. But every time you notice the old pattern and consciously choose not to follow it, you are strengthening the new pathways. You are teaching your brain a new way of being. And your brain is an excellent student. It may be 60 years old, but its capacity for change is remarkable. Neuroplasticity does not end at any age. Your brain can form new connections and new patterns for as long as you live. The only thing it needs from you is the decision to try. I also want to acknowledge the grief. Because releasing expectations involves a kind of mourning. You are mourning the relationship you hoped for. You are mourning the version of your partner that existed only in your imagination. You are mourning the thank you that never came. The acknowledgement that was never offered. The tenderness that was never shown. This grief is real and it deserves to be felt. Do not rush past it. Do not pretend it is not there. Sit with it. Let it move through you. And know that on the other side of this grief is something extraordinary. There is a version of you that is unburdened and alive and ready for adventure. That version has been waiting inside you for a very long time. And it is finally ready to step into the light. Let me tell you what I have seen in people who make this transition. They start doing things that surprise everyone around them. The woman who spent 40 years cooking for her family signs up for an art class. She discovers she has a talent for watercolors that no one knew about, including herself. The man who spent his entire career in a gray office starts volunteering at a community garden. He discovers that growing things makes him feel more alive than any promotion ever did. The couple who spent years in tense silence redefines their relationship. They start taking separate vacations. She goes to the mountains. He goes to the coast. And when they come back, they actually have something to talk about. They have stories to share. They have experiences that are their own. And the marriage becomes more interesting than it has been in decades. Not because they fixed it, but because they stopped trying to fix it and started living instead. This is the paradox at the heart of this entire message. When you stop trying to make someone else responsible for your happiness, you create the conditions for genuine happiness to emerge. When you stop chasing love, you become more lovable. When you stop demanding attention, you become more interesting. When you release control, you gain freedom. These are not contradictions. They are the natural laws of emotional physics. And they apply to everyone regardless of age or circumstance. I want to speak directly to you now. You who are listening to this in a quiet room. You who have been nodding along because every word feels like it was written about your life. I want you to know something. Your journey has not been ordinary. You have lived through some of the most turbulent decades in modern history. You survived economic collapse. You survived the digital revolution. You survived the complete restructuring of social norms and family dynamics. You did all of this while raising children and maintaining households and holding down jobs and caring for aging parents. You did this without therapy apps or meditation retreats or self-help podcasts. You did it with nothing but your own stubborn determination and the quiet strength that runs through your generation like steel cable through concrete. And now you have arrived at this moment. This quiet, powerful moment when you get to choose yourself. For the first time in your life, you are allowed to be selfish. Not selfish in the destructive sense. Selfish in the sacred sense. Selfish in the sense that you finally recognize that you cannot pour from an empty cup. That taking care of yourself is not a betrayal of the people you love. It is the foundation on which you can love them better. When you are whole and at peace and living in alignment with your own values, you have more to give than you ever did when you were exhausted and resentful and running on fumes. So here is my gentle request to you. Please stop apologizing for your needs. Please stop minimizing your desires. Please stop telling yourself that it is too late. It is not too late. The brain science is clear on this point. You have decades of cognitive potential ahead of you. Your crystallized intelligence is at its peak. Your emotional wisdom is unmatched. Your capacity for joy has not diminished. It has simply been buried under years of obligation. And now that you are digging it out, it is going to shine with a brilliance that surprises you. Think about what it means to have survived everything you have survived and still be here. Still be open. Still be willing to listen to a message like this at this hour of the night. That willingness alone tells me everything I need to know about you. You are not someone who has given up on life. You are someone who has given up on a version of life that was not working. And that is the most courageous thing a person can do. It is far easier to stay in a painful, familiar pattern than to step into the unknown. But you are stepping. Maybe hesitantly. Maybe with trembling hands. But you are stepping. And that step is all it takes to begin. I want to leave you with an image. Think back to those road trips your generation used to take before GPS existed. You had a thick paper map spread across your knees. The roads were winding and confusing. You made wrong turns. You got lost. You pulled over and tried to figure out where you were. But you kept driving. You kept navigating. And eventually you arrived somewhere wonderful. Not always where you planned to go. Sometimes somewhere even better. That is exactly where you are right now. You have been driving through difficult terrain for decades. You have made wrong turns. You have been lost. But you kept going. And now the road is opening up in front of you. The landscape is changing. The sky is wide and bright. And the destination is entirely up to you. Your brain is ready for this. It has been preparing for this moment your entire life. Every tear you shed was building your empathy. Every battle you fought was building your strength. Every expectation you released was clearing space for something new. You are not at the end of your story. You are at the most interesting part. The part where the hero finally stops saving everyone else and learns to save themselves. The part where the journey turns inward and the real adventure begins. Your generation was told that aging means decline. But the truth is that aging means refinement. It means distillation. It means becoming more purely and powerfully yourself than you have ever been. Everything you have been through has led to this. The quiet kitchens and the thankless mornings. The arguments that went nowhere. The birthdays that were forgotten. The dreams that were postponed. The tears that were wiped away before anyone could see them. None of it was wasted. All of it was the curriculum for the most important lesson of your life. You do not need anyone else to complete you. You were always complete. You just forgot. And now you are remembering. Take that knowledge and hold it gently. Let it warm you on the cold nights when the old loneliness tries to creep back in. Let it steady you when the old habits of self-sacrifice whisper that you should put yourself last again. You have earned the right to be first. Not because you are better than anyone else, but because you have spent long enough being last. The universe does not keep score, but your brain does. And right now your brain is telling you that it is time. Time to rest. Time to play. Time to explore. Time to be foolish and spontaneous and imperfect and alive. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, I want you to notice something small. The way the light enters your room. The feeling of the sheets against your skin. The first breath of the new day filling your lungs. These tiny details are your life. Not the grand gestures. Not the dramatic moments. These small, quiet, beautiful details. And for the first time in a long time they belong to you and you alone. No one is asking you to share them. No one is asking you to sacrifice them. They are yours. Completely and unconditionally yours. Your brain is not declining. It is ascending. Your life is not ending. It is expanding. Your heart is not closing. It is opening in a new direction. Toward yourself. And that is not selfish. That is sacred. You have earned every single moment of the peace that is coming your way. Please believe that. Please know it in your bones. You are not too old. You are not too tired. You are not too broken. You are exactly the right age and exactly the right amount of weathered and exactly the right kind of strong for what comes next. And what comes next is going to be beautiful. Not because the world will suddenly become perfect, but because you have finally given yourself permission to enjoy it as it is. With all of its flaws and surprises and ordinary miracles. That permission is the greatest gift you have ever given yourself. And you gave it the moment you decided to stop expecting someone else to make you happy. So tonight, as you turn off this screen and the darkness settles around you, I want you to carry one thought into your sleep. You did enough. You gave enough. You love enough. And now it is time to receive. Not from someone else. From yourself. From the extraordinary, capable, beautiful brain that has been quietly working on your behalf for 60 years. Trust it. It knows what it is doing. It has been waiting for this moment. And so have you. Sleep well tonight. Tomorrow is yours.